This morning, with 8 days left in the legislature, Texas Republicans are crossing off red meat issues like bills affecting transgender children before addressing priorities like property taxes. Game over for casinos and sports betting bills this session. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick called them a waste of time. State lawmakers closed a loophole for gun background checks. It's the one the Texas Tribune revealed in an investigation last year. And the Crown Act finally passed overwhelmingly in the legislature. Did the elimination of just one word in the bill get Republicans on board? We'll ask the author, State Rep. Retta Bowers.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Wheeler in for Jason Whiteley. We have just about a little more than a week left in this legislative session, so let's get you to some headlines as we head down the stretch run here. School vouchers, also known as education savings accounts, might be the issue that ends up in a special session. The Senate passed a bill on this, but the chair of the House Public Education Committee didn't even bring the issue up for a vote on Thursday. It remains a priority for Governor Abbott, though. In fact, he says if lawmakers don't expand school choice, he'll call special sessions. The holdouts here, though, are suburban and rural Republicans. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has committed about 1,000 National Guard troops from his state to the Texas border with Mexico. Governor Abbott asked fellow governors to send all the police and soldiers they could. Abbott feared a surge in migrants after the Title 42 COVID restrictions ended this month, allowing migrants to once again be able to request asylum in the U.S. But that surge that the governor feared didn't materialize. The numbers at the border have been sharply down so far. It is game over for casinos and sports betting in Texas this year. Legalizing casino resorts didn't move in the legislature. Sports betting did pass the House, but Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick says it's not going any further than that. He tweeted that the Texas Senate doesn't pass bills with the GOP in the minority. Patrick adding, can't waste committee and floor time in the last days. Meantime, one of the biggest priorities for Texas Republicans might not make it to the finish line either. School vouchers we're talking about here, also called education savings accounts or ESAs. Governor Abbott, as we just said, really wants this. The Senate passed it, but suburban and rural Republicans in the House still oppose this. State Rep. Brian Harrison, a Republican from Waxahachie, sits on the Public Education Committee. He remains optimistic that it will pass one way or the other. He took some questions from Jason Whiteley.
Representative, thanks for being back on the program with us. First question, is school choice dead for the regular session?
Well, it might be dead for the regular session, but that does not mean that it's dead for the state of Texas this year. I really appreciate Governor Abbott's leadership on this and his continued commitment to getting not just school choice, but universal school choice passed so that every family, every parent, every student in the state of Texas can have education freedom. He's come out and been very clear that even if it takes a special session, which it's looking like it's going to, he's willing to do that. And quite frankly, we need to do that. We need to get this right. I don't care how long it takes or how many special sessions it takes. We must empower every Texas family with education freedom this year.
But it's suburban and rural Republicans who remain the roadblock on this. Do you expect any votes to change if this goes to a special session?
Well, I think there's a sense that we're going to get something done. I'm encouraged. I am optimistic. I am not discouraged in the slightest, because I'll tell you what, I would rather this go to a special session and get a good, robust, universal bill that works for every Texas family than try to rush something together here in the last week. So I'm not discouraged at all. I am perhaps more optimistic and more encouraged than ever. And I will tell you from my conversations, even amongst some of my colleagues in the legislature that might have been a little bit skeptical of the issue at the beginning, early days of session, there is a real sense, there's an understanding that Texans deserve this. And we owe it to our voters to get this done. I'm more encouraged than I've ever been.
If the governor calls a special session, and it looks like that he might on this issue, is there anything else you'd like to see the governor add to that call?
Well, we're in the final days of negotiations here on certain big issues, such as property tax relief. I would like to make sure that we do as much as we can to give as much of our surplus back to the voters. That's of utmost importance to me. And then another thing that I think would be good for him to probably consider adding to the call is strong border security legislation. I am really disappointed that the Texas House allowed Democrats on a silly, weak point of order to kill the only serious, the only robust piece of border security legislation in either chamber, and that was House Bill 20 by Representative Matt Schaefer. It included all of the Texas Title 42 Act that I introduced a couple months ago. They created a border security force with actual findings and authorizations, and it would give Governor Abbott more tools than he has today.
Before we let you go, I want to ask about property taxes. Do you expect that to get settled before the gavel falls on the 29th of May?
I'm really optimistic. Both chambers are putting in a lot of hard work on this. It's probably one of the biggest issues that matters to my voters. Of course, I would like to see us ultimately pass a package that puts us on a path to eliminating property taxes. I don't think either plan that's being proposed right now goes as far as I would like it to get to, but both of them do offer real property tax relief, and I hope that we can get something accomplished here soon, as appraisals have already gone out to the millions of Texans back home. They're waiting anxiously and rightfully expecting that we give them some property tax relief.
Representative Harrison, we appreciate the time as always.
Always great to be with you, Jason.
We watched something rare happen at the state capitol regarding guns. Lawmakers closed a critical loophole in background checks, passing a bill now requiring courts to report juveniles sent to mental hospitals to the federal gun background check system. This was the result of an investigation last year by ProPublica and the Texas Tribune. Ian Mitra is the senior managing editor at the Tribune and joins us from Austin this morning. Ian, thanks for being with us. Some good reporting from you all, and that led to some change here. This is a rare example of gun-related legislation passing since the Uvalde massacre. Any reason here to believe that the governor might not sign it?
Oh, not necessarily. I think it's just an interesting thing, because I think if you look back at the 2009 legislation that kind of created this background check reporting, the intent was for juveniles as well as adults who were, subject to involuntary mental health hospitalizations, for them, for their names to be reported to the federal background check system. And while adults were being reported in, juveniles weren't necessarily consistently. And so I think, from a legal perspective, the law originally was intended to do this. And so this was, kind of addressing a loophole with the intention of the original law.
Okay, we'll stay tuned to see what the governor does with that. Also, we discussed this a few weeks ago. Lawmakers want to set up a fund to build new water reservoirs here in Texas and repair aging infrastructure. This is finally moving. Do you expect the governor to get that one before the end of the session, Ian?
Yeah, this is moving, and I think this will go to the governor's desk. And, this has been an issue that the Tribune has highlighted, but also is just a statewide issue in terms of looking ahead to the state's water supply as the state continues to grow in population. So I think this is something that a lot of, Republicans and Democrats are really strong behind in terms of thinking out years from now in terms of shoring up our water supply.
Ian Mitra with the Texas Tribune. Thanks for that. And please stick around with us for the Reporters Roundtable here in just a few. Coming up, the Crown Act is on its way to the governor's desk. Did the elimination of one word in that bill get Republicans on board? State Rep Retta Bowers is with us from Austin in a moment. And what will the final days of the legislature look like in the State House? State Rep Mihaela Plisa has a fresh eyes on this. We're going to ask her when Inside Texas Politics returns. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics today. A bill called the Crown Act is now on its way to the governor's desk. It prevents schools or businesses from discriminating against people because of their hairstyle. Now, 2 years ago, it could not get out of a single committee, but this year it passed overwhelmingly. However, it was missing one word this time. Here's Jason Whiteley again with the bill's author, State Rep Retta Bowers from Dallas.
Representative Bowers, congratulations to you. First question, how did you convince Republicans to get on board with this time?
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you, and I think you'll appreciate that. But the colleagues that were returning, Republican colleagues, they were like, didn't we already pass this? They felt so good about it, and they remembered it. That was really to our benefit, that they remembered it. Those new ones, I do recall one of my Republican colleagues, I had to send him to my Republican joint author. So that was key as well, because I was explaining it to him and he just wasn't hearing me. Maybe because he kept seeing that D behind my name and on my chest. I want to say, Jason, to you and to anyone watching, that I felt the love of the body for a change.
This issue really began to get some attention several years back when a high schooler outside of the Houston area in Channelview, I believe, could not graduate high school because he had dreadlocks. How do you expect this bill, if it's signed into law, to change for this student and so many others across the state? How will it change things in Texas?
What it will do is make sure that children are not held in in-school suspension and without classroom instruction. It'll make sure that so many people are not looking at not getting hired or being held back from a promotion. So for better quality of life, and certainly better quality of life when looking at housing, that they won't get discriminated against when filling out those applications and trying to make sure they get where they live where they want and walk in authentically as themselves.
This year's bill specifically did not mention the word dreadlocks. How vital was that in getting Republicans to support it?
I don't know if that was exactly it, but it certainly didn't. I mean, we made sure that it said Bantu knots, twists, and locks when it came to protective styles. I think that using the word or the part of the word dread before locks really does have a demeaning connotation. And I just don't think that we need to speak about locks in that way.
Representative Bowers, do you expect the governor to sign this into law?
I'm hopeful that he will. And that he will grant it a full signing ceremony. I just think that we should be able to get those pens, stand with the governor. And I just hope that he sees what a great and historic moment that will be for the state of Texas.
Representative Bowers, congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. Always good to see you.
And besides the Crown Act, Democrats got some other things that they wanted in Austin this time around, too. For starters, killing school vouchers. Suburban and rural Republicans joined with them to defeat that measure in the Texas House. But what will happen when we get to a special session? State Rep Mihaela Plisa represents part of Collin County and spoke to Jason Whiteley from her office at the Capitol.
Representative, welcome back to the program. It looks like school choice is dead for the regular session. Governor Abbott, of course, saying that he will call a special session to handle this. But do you have any indication that suburban and rural Republicans who also oppose this, whether they might change their minds and finally support it in a special session?
You know what? I do not see that we are going to move this bill in the House. I don't see my Republican colleagues that have been opposed to vouchers moving to be a yes on this. Honestly, I would like for us to come back. If we're going to come back and have a special session, I think that we should have a special session on the things that are really affecting Texans. And, the number one killer of kids in our state is gun violence. And so I would like to see us focus on things that really matter to our state and not continue to try to pass these voucher schemes.
Let's talk about gun violence for a moment here, too. Your district is very close to the Allen Premium Outlet Mall where the mass murder was recently. You wrote in an email to your constituents recently, if elected officials can take credit for the successes in our state, we also must be willing to accept responsibility for the failures and tragedies as well and do better for our constituents. I'm curious, though, what more could the state have done to prevent what happened in Allen when he didn't have a criminal record and no mental health history?
Well, look, last session, I watched my colleagues pass criminalist carry. I also watched Democrats on the House floor propose numerous amendments that would have prevented not just the shooting in Allen, but the shooting in Uvalde and all over the state of Texas. We know that this shooter had a history of mental illness. That's why he was discharged from the military. We know that he legally acquired an arsenal of weapons. I've seen my colleagues and I propose legislation around raising the age, tightening gun show loopholes, red flag laws, even safe storage laws. But unfortunately, we have not even been able to move and get a committee hearing on these bills, let alone have a debate on them on the House floor. So I believe that we can prevent this epidemic of mass violence and mass shootings in our state. We just have to have leaders on the floor that are willing to be courageous enough and stand against the NRA.
Have you heard from any shopping areas in your district that are taking new security measures after what happened in Allen?
Absolutely. I have been in contact with local officials, my small businesses. They're living in fear. And it's not just about the trauma and grief counseling that they're going to have to provide to their employees and their staff. It's also about the damage that has done to these businesses. When you look at the Allen Outlet Mall, I shop there. My constituents shop there. People are afraid to go there. People will never be able to shop at that location the same way again. And to be honest with you, I don't even know how long that mall is going to be closed. I know that when speaking with survivors, there is a lot of trauma, there is a lot of anxiety, and my community is living in fear right now.
Representative, we appreciate the honesty and the time as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, still to come in the roundtable this morning, the struggle between the House and the Senate in the final full week of the legislature. And a brand new episode of our Yolitics podcast is out this morning. We are pulling the politics out of immigration. It can be done so that you can really understand what's happening at the border and who's at fault for it. It is a smart conversation with an immigration expert from the George W. Bush Institute. Look for Yolitics wherever you get your podcasts. It is time now for the Reporters Roundtable to put all the headlines in perspective. Ian Mitra is back with us from the Texas Tribune. Also each week with us, Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram and Bernadine Steptoe, the political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Thanks all of you for being with us here for this. Let's start off with the elbowing going on between the House and the Senate in Austin. Texans keep saying that they want the electric grid fixed and they want property tax relief. We've heard a lot about this. Is it getting done, though? Is it going to get done? Ian?
Well, starting on the electric grid, there's been legislation moving related to kind of financial incentives for, building natural gas-fired plants. And so, this is certainly a spot of sensitivity for the state because of the massive grid failure that happened. So there is legislation moving on that. And certainly property taxes has just been has been constantly in the news. And so the bills are very different right now in the House and the Senate, but there's going to be negotiations, a lot of stuff, and if it doesn't pass versus in the regular session, you keep an eye out for a special on that one.
Yeah, these are definitely hefty items, Bud. What say you?
Well, something has to happen on the grid by Tuesday. Something has to go over to the Senate and come back. It can still get done, but my gosh, given a $10 billion in discount loans to get it done, there's battles between big business in Texas on whether to do this or not. Senfronia Thompson is accusing the Senate of holding House bills hostage.
Yeah, Bernadine, there's been a lot of criticism about the plans that they've been discussing there in Austin this time.
I know it, but they must get something done. And if not, then I'm thinking that this is something that Governor Abbott would possibly bring into a special session. But I think, as Ian said earlier, what's in the public domain as much is about property tax relief. Because that's present, that's what's going on now. The voters and the constituents are getting their bills, and they're skyrocketing. So I think that something is going to happen. We just have to find out what it will be.
Now, Republicans have full control. They have for a long time, Ian, and yet they've been butting heads this time over property tax relief and school vouchers and other things as well. But they stood solid against gender treatments for teenagers under 18. We've been hearing about this issue for years. It seems like it's been sweeping the country in legislatures all across the country. What's different this time here in Texas?
Well, I think, Jason, you nailed it in terms of looking at the national aspect of this. This isn't just about the state of Texas. This is been a national movement here on this legislation, and you're seeing this as part of a broader wave rather than something specific in the state. This is something that really is just kind of being put on a national stage.
And Bud, this makes the base happy?
Well, the reason it's on the national stage is because Republicans are happy now with the Supreme Court decision on abortion. That doesn't turn voters out anymore. Republicans have mixed feelings about same-sex marriage. That doesn't motivate voters like it used to. But transgender rights, anything involving sex and gender is the big issue that inflames Republican vote. That's why it's in the House and the Senate.
They must be seeing something in polling, Bernadine.
Yes, and it is a safe issue for Republicans because, as we've said, most of them do agree with some kind of regulation, and that's what's happening. And when you talk about children, you know, people tend to agree when you're talking about doing something they feel is positive for their children. And I think that's why it is a safe issue for Republicans. And they are in the majority, so they can get done what they want to get done.
And Jason, Democrats are 50-50 on the issue, so the Democrats can't really effectively fight.
Yeah.
We're in that rare position where we actually have a little bit of time left over here, so I have to ask the three of you, with the legislature winding down here, what are the chances that we see a special session? Because there's some big things left to hammer out. What's the chance that we see multiple special sessions like we did the last time? Ian, sorry.
Well, it really kind of depends on what happens in the last couple of weeks. I think, you know, the governor has already kind of, you know, thrown out hints about a special session potentially on a voucher-related program later in the year. And, you know, obviously, certainly we talked about property taxes and the grid. Those are issues that could easily spur a special too if they don't get resolved before the end of the regular session.
And Bud, the governor has spent a lot of political capital on school vouchers in particular.
He's going to bring them back for vouchers. There's too much to get done in this last week. You know, whether they did or didn't finish work on the border bill, we didn't talk about that, but they have a lot of big jobs ahead. They don't have time to do vouchers.
Bernadine?
We're going to see a special session. And I think that school choice will probably be in it. There are too many issues out there and too many laws that have not been moved to the governor's desk. And so we're going to see a special session.
And with that, we are out of time. Thank you to you all, and thank you for watching. We'll see you again next week.